writing these on the corner of your exam paper where it's easy for you to look at, it would be easy for you to look back at it and you can check again which part of the question that you haven't answered. Now you have
Mari bersatu nyalakan masa depan kita.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, I'll be guiding you through writing a narrative essay for SPM. So let's start with the tips. When writing a narrative essay, first of all, you have to consider the topic or think about the topic that is given to you. When thinking about a topic, you have to think about how this story is able to relate to you somehow. For instance, A, it could relate to an experience that you had before, or B, it could relate to an experience that you have heard from others. C, it could relate to plots of maybe your favorite movies or TV series. When you figure out that this topic relates to you somehow, or you can relate to a personal experience, or a story that you've heard, or a movie that you've watched, it would be easier for you to write a plot for your whole essay. The second tip would be drafting. Drafting is very important because this is going to make sure that you don't go far from what the story wants you to tell. What I usually do when I finally choose a question that I like is that I would highlight or underline the requirements of the question. Let me give you an example of an SPM question in 2017. Write a story in which you have to keep a friend's secret. In your story, give details of the secret and explain why it was important to keep that secret. Now, from this question, you would realize that there are three things for you to do. One is to write a story about a secret that you had to keep. What was the secret? Two, you have to give details of the secret. And three, you have to tell the examiner or the reader why is it important for you to keep that secret. After you underline the requirements, it is important for you to write it somewhere at the corner of your test paper where it's easy for you to look at. When writing these on the corner of your exam paper where it's easy for you to look at, it would be easy for you to look back at it and you can check again which part of the question that you haven't answered. Now you have to draft the plots of your story. Drafting the plot of the story doesn't have to take too much time. If you take too much time to draft, I'm afraid you're not going to have enough time to actually finish writing your story. So you're just supposed to write the general outline of what you want your story to look like. In conclusion, when you draft, it is easy for you to tell your story and it makes sure that your story does not seem messy. It makes sure that you answer whatever the question wants. This method of drafting will also avoid you from going blank during your exam. This avoids you from overwriting. Because sometimes when you write and you get a little too into the story, you're passionate, you want to write, you end up forgetting the whole purpose of what the story needs to be, and you realize you did not have enough time to finish your essay. What should be the thought process behind writing your essay? First of all, you have to take note of the settings. This means that where you want the story to be at, probably your own country, your own village, or somewhere in America because you want it to relate to a movie that you've watched. And you have chosen a setting for your essay. It is important for you to bear in mind other factors such as the social ideologies that goes in the community, meaning that what the society around them believes. I mean, you wouldn't want to mix up having Halloween inside a Malay village, right? That would be wrong. You have to always keep in mind the purpose of your story. It's either what is your story trying to tell? What problem is your story or your characters are trying to resolve? What impact will this story give to your readers? Number three, when writing a story, you also have to include details. SPM students usually face two problems with details. One, it's either they lack details in their story, and number two, they would also over-detail things sometimes. Let me talk about lack of details first. When you lack details, your story becomes too short. It sounds boring, it sounds too simple, and the reader is unable to imagine or put themselves in the places of the characters that you're writing about. You can add certain details to smaller things to describe the emotion that you're trying to portray to the reader. For instance, this is an essay called The Closet. Lisa heard the screams and tried to make herself as small as she could. The closet she was hiding in was pitch black, not much bigger than a phone booth, and smelled of bleach. But for now, it was her only refuge from the terror that reigned just beyond the darkness of her sanctuary. Also doesn't have to be that complicated. As long as you're able to describe just a little bit about the situation around the character for the readers to put themselves in the character's shoes. Let me talk about over-detailing. Over-detailing is basically you putting too much detail or describing way too much to the point where it's rather useless. So when describing something too detailed, it also makes the reader a bit bored with what they're reading. For the usage of language inside your essay, you have to make sure that the language you use is simple and understandable to readers. This is a story that you want the readers to experience with you, and for them to be able to really dive in your story, they must be able to understand it. You can insert a few bombastic words, but then using too much bombastic words also is not a good idea. One tip that my teacher used to tell me was to avoid reusing the same word over and over again. A way for you to stop repeating your words is to actually find synonyms of these words. For instance, substitute the word big with the word huge, gigantic, enormous, colossal, and so much more. You can also substitute the word small with tiny or minuscule. Another tip that my teacher used to tell me was to avoid using the word very something. For instance, very big, very beautiful, very small, very angry, very smelly. Those words are to be avoided to make sure that you get those marks in SPM. So how am I supposed to emphasize on this particular subject when I can't use the word very? There are words that you can find online to substitute the word very. For instance, when you want to write in an essay that someone is very, very angry, you can say that he was furious. Or you want to describe that a house is very big, you can say that the house is massive. And to say that the kitchen is very clean, you can say that the kitchen is spotless. So avoid using the word very. This would show the reader that you have wide vocabulary. That's all for narrative essay today. I really hope that from this video, you can improve your essay. All the best. Bye!